Hey guys, we are live here. Welcome to the Bags to Riches podcast. I'm your host, Zach Ginn. I am so excited for today's podcast. I'm telling you right now, this is going to be a game changer for everyone on here that wants to pull lists the right way. Specifically in this podcast, I'm with Deonna Britt, who is an actual lawyer who actually understands wholesaling. Most real estate lawyers out there, they're going to tell you some crazy stuff, but wholesaling's illegal, stuff like that. Deonna here she is so well-versed in actually pulling probates, going through crazy wholesaling probate situations, and she's a lawyer and a real estate wholesaler. She's out of Atlanta, Georgia. She is honestly here just to help and serve. So I'm so excited for today. So thanks so much for coming on, Deonna.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So let's get this question out of it. How did you get into real estate wholesaling?
It's funny question to start with because this is not what I expected, right? So again, I'm the founder of Law Clerk on Demand. My name is Deonna Britt, and when I graduated law school, I had this idea to start this business, right? I wanted to just create a niche of assisting attorneys on demand and just having like graduates work for attorneys. And then I had a family member who was like my uncle, he was restarting his real estate company. And so he said, "Hey, you're always in the courthouse. Like, can you go over here to the probate court?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's like easy peasy. I'm in there anyway." So because the people I worked for were like, I was like spending the day in the courthouse. So so once I started pulling lists for him, he was like, "You really should go to the RIA." And so naturally, by being there, I started to learn real estate. So that's why I'm such a huge supporter of real estate investor associations, because originally I was there to sell a product, but I decided, let me really pay attention, take notes, network. And then that was my introduction to real estate, because I was in every meeting. Like, I know so many investors in Atlanta because I was at all their meetings. And so I was fortunate to not only introduce the brand and the service, but to learn real estate, everything from wholesaling and just like building from there. So that was how I got started. It was completely unexpected, but I'm so happy it happened.
Wow. Okay. And how did you specifically get into probates?
So probate specifically was just based on that request from my uncle, right? He was like, he had heard about it. He had just left a webinar. And so he was asking me to go in there. And so, I was somewhat familiar just from what I had learned in law school, but I honestly literally went in there and figured it out. So I had to rely on, of course, my legal knowledge to like understand, okay, what does probate mean? How to read a file, how to look for information. And then simultaneously, I was literally learning like real estate, because I had to analyze it like, okay, what's going on legally? And then think, okay, why does this matter to an investor? And so probate just took off. That's our number one list. And then things continue to build from there.
Okay. So I can go and scream to everybody. Like I do probate deals all the time. It's an amazing list. I can't like promote it anymore.
Right.
But honestly, when I talk about probate, I'm talking about stuff I know in Florida. Again, I give a lot of the stuff to lawyers on a crazy situation, but it's great to have someone that understands probate, a lot smarter than me when it comes to the legal stuff, and that can actually explain it like very simply and easily. Again, you have courses, you teach all this stuff, but for someone that's brand new and they want to get into probates, what is a probate? What's the process? And how can a wholesaler actually profit from this?
Great question. Okay. So starting with what is probate? So probate, and I really want to break this down as an investor and agent, right? Picture yourself standing in the courthouse and there's this office that's labeled probate. That is actually an umbrella for several things that can happen in the probate office, right? Like your marriage license, your gun license, guardianship issues. So all these things are happening in the probate court. So it's a big umbrella, but we're specifically interested as investors in the estates that are being filed. So basically someone passes away and their family member or someone related to the matter will walk into the courthouse and, they're raising their hand saying, "I would like to be responsible for this estate. I would like to access what the stuff," that's the way I say it, the stuff that belonged to that person. So that's the house, the cars, the bank account, because we legally can't sell what we don't own, right?
Yeah.
So In order to sell these properties, they have to raise their hand, go fill out that paperwork, unless there is some legal device that gives them ownership. But they're going to fill out that paperwork, and they're asking the court to give them the legal authority to access those matters, transfer the title over to them. And then this comes into play when we want to buy those properties. So probate is so important because it's not just about working a probate list. It's important to know as an investor or as a real estate agent, period, because this can come up when you just find a vacant property, right? It can come up in any real estate transaction. So it's really, really important to understand.
Okay. So if someone unfortunately passes away and the son or daughter, they want to get rid of the property,
Right.
how can me as a real estate investor go to that person? Because it seems like they'd be very motivated. Let's say they lived out of state, the property's been in disarray. How do I
Mhm.
actually get a deal from that? Like what's the process?
Yes. So that is a fantastic question. So this is important to real estate investors and real estate agents because once their an order is issued and they're actually given the power to sell this property. If I'm living in California and I have a property in Georgia, is it realistic for me to go back and forth? Probably
Right.
not, right? So once that property turns into a headache, you as an investor can bring them that Advil of selling that property, right? But you guys have to be on notice of folks that are in that situation. So that's why it's so important to consistently have lists, coming in or consistently be working these files so that every single person is aware of your services. Because the moment that they raise their hand and say, you know what, I'm sick of this property, you want to be available to assist them. And that may take some time. We may not see, on the first communication that they're interested, but over time, as that headache grows, investors want to be there. And then after that person says, yes, I want to sell, you would treat that like a regular transaction, just as long as the probate is over with. And it just depends on your state exactly when they can sell that property. But once they have legal authority to sell, then you're going to treat that like a regular transaction, getting it under contract and either holding it for yourself or wholesaling it to someone.
Okay. So again, a very important question because
Yes,
most real no, this is just came out of my head, but I know this is very important because I want to
this
get
is
this out of the
good.
way. This is the easiest question I think I can ask. When a realtor goes to somebody in Georgia, I've heard 10 million times from people in Atlanta. They go to a realtor, they say, "Hey, I want to do wholesaling real estate," and then
Mm,
the realtor says, "Wholesaling's illegal."
mm.
Is wholesaling legal in Georgia?
So wholesaling at this moment is legal in Georgia, but
Okay.
I think it becomes an issue where you cannot legally, buy and sell properties, hold yourself out to be like a salesperson without
Yeah.
a license, right? So I think it's about what are you legally selling? Are you selling a contract? Are you selling your equitable interest in a property? That's where it becomes important. That line is very fine. So I think it's important because I know you have followers all over that they understand the laws in their state and really make sure that they're conducting themselves within the means of the law. Because we're all reading articles about states where the laws are changing, and you want to be really aware of that and
Yeah.
make sure your business is not conducting themselves in a way that is not compliant.
Okay. So when it comes to actually, so we know probates are going to do very well in the
Mhm.
future for wholesaling and real estate investors, things like that.
Right.
But so how do I get a hold of them? I sort of know the two ways to get a hold of them is you physically will go find the list or you'll go
Mhm.
buy the list. So
Exactly.
how can somebody do those both?
Okay. So you can find a provider. So of course, you can reach out to Law Clerk on demand and we can actually do the process for you. We have clerks that will go to the courthouse, shake the files down and find it for you. The other option is you can go yourself, right? Going into the courthouse and asking questions. Um, it just depends on the courthouse whether or not they'll give you access. There are some courthouses that say, hey, if you're not an attorney, you can't look at these files, right? It is public information. However, it just depends. I've always said courthouses have personalities, right? And so some personalities are nice, some are just terrible. So, but yes, you can physically go there, whether it's on a computer, whether it's in files, whether it's in a vault. I've seen it literally in a vault that closes scary stuff. Okay.
Okay.
So, but they're there. Hmm.
Okay. And so, in your success,
Hmm.
you have so many testimonials on Law Clerk on Demand from successful wholesalers, people using your stuff. I think
Hmm.
the number one thing I always say is, I think a year ago I didn't know about your service. I'm not in Georgia, so I don't use Law Clerk on Demand, but I know a lot of people that use it do very well.
Right.
There's all these companies out there that like they'll sell probate leads for you, and I figure out these leads are like 8 months old and it's just terrible. Um,
Yeah.
the number one thing I do say is I used to say never buy from any service, and then I figure out what you guys did, and I was like, well, you
Hmm.
actually physically go there, you get it fresh. What's
Yes.
the important? What is the importance of actually pulling probates? Like when someone passes away, the court filing is actually going
Hmm.
within a month and contacting them versus going to just a regular probate service and doing probates from like 8 months ago.
This question is amazing. You are killing it with these questions.
Thank you.
So, um, this is so important. So, first thing I would say, Law Clerk on Demand has literally been built and structured around the aggravations, the frustrations of real estate investors. As I said in the beginning of the story, my uncle is an investor and he sent me in the courthouse. So, shout out to him because I was really structuring around his aggravations. He was like, the leads are old, the numbers are bad.
Yep.
I need good information. And I said, hey, look, if you look at this file, there's better information in the courthouse. So that's the way that we function. So we're constantly analyzing the freshness and the quality of the list that we are providing because we know you're aggravated. Um, it is very important. Our standard is to pull information within a 30-day window,
Okay.
because it's literally like the moment that they drop the paperwork, we're there to snatch it out
Mhm.
the basket.
Okay.
Okay. So that's important because you want to build a relationship within that first 30 days. So while they may be still going through the court proceeding and may not have the legal right to sell to you yet, you want to be in that person's ear, meeting them, viewing the property, explaining who you are, so that the moment they have the legal right to sell, you're there. As time progresses, of course, there could be more contacts, just like any other list. So if you're talking to a list provider and you have the right to ask the list provider, hey, when do y'all pull, list? How old is this? But if you're talking to them and they're telling you leads are several months old, the more time that goes by, that's more people that had an opportunity to send a letter, more people that are cold calling, texting, sending wingless voicemails. So if you can stay within that 30-day window, I think that's a really good sweet spot um, for probate marketing.
Okay. And when it comes to just doing probates, I mean,
Hmm.
in general, what's the play for a real estate wholesaler if, let's say, someone passes away, someone's father passes away, you go to the daughter, she's the only daughter of the person. There's no
Hmm.
will, but I mean, she's the only daughter, and you cold call and you just find out that they passed away a year ago. She's so distraught, she hasn't really done any court proceedings. What's the play with that? Can you have that property under contract with her? How can a wholesaler go about that legally to actually get a deal?
Right. So if you are in a situation where you find out that the person you're working with has a family who member who has passed away and there is no will in place, that means that the state is going to speak, right? That's dying
Mm.
intestate. So that means that we have to look at the laws in the state to see how things are going to be distributed. So that you're still going to file that paperwork, right? You as a
Mm.
wholesaler do not have to memorize that whole process. You just need the alert to go off in your mind, like, okay, ma'am, you had, ask them, hey, have you filed anything with the court? If the answer is no, then you would either, I would have a probate attorney that I can call, or just be familiar with your court's processes and say, hey, this is the courthouse. I'll even call up there for you. Maybe you keep a couple packets in your office, whatever you have to do to keep that deal going. But I think the more familiar you are in the state, then you will be able to keep that deal moving forward. And so once they fill out that paperwork, then the court will notify them as to next steps to continue to keep that probate case going.
Okay, so in Georgia, could you write a contract with that daughter, or would you have to wait for probate to be done?
In Georgia, you would have to wait until it's done unless that daughter legally has something giving her
Mm.
power over that property. And I think that's where it gets fuzzy. And so I would just
Yeah.
say, listen, let's listen to the specific situation. And you guys need to know, hey, let me call up the courthouse, let me know the laws. Or if I get stuck, who to call.
Okay. And really, another probate question I really have here is
Yes.
when when there's a will in place, it's a little easier. When there's
Hmm.
not, so how can somebody? Unfortunately, I mean, like let's say for example, Fulton County, probably one of the craziest, most populous counties for wholesalers out there. How can somebody who's using Law Clerk on Demand or any service, like with the list for like December, for example, how can somebody stand out when trying to actually get a probate deal when there's like 50 other investors going after the same probate list?
That is good. Okay. So I get that question a lot too. And I love that question because, if you're marketing in the city, in an area, in a county that's very popular, folks get anxious about that, right?
Mm.
So what I would say is number one, cold calling is very hot right now. So, direct mail still works. But I think if you're going to, I would say number one, cold call or use text messaging. Or if you're going to send direct mail, focus on unique mail pieces, really research how can I stand out? So whether you're spending a little bit more for specialty cards that you're sending out, right? If you're marketing during the holidays, maybe you're sending out marketing that reflects the holiday that's going on. And just being consistent because time and time again, as much as folks are frustrated or anxious about saturation with probate lists, we continue to have testimonials in extremely saturated areas, right? So it's
Yeah.
the investor that's consistent and continues to analyze and be consistent in their marketing. That's going to be the investor that wins.
All right. And I always recommend this. I think you kind of said this too when dealing with a wholesaling deal that
Mhm.
with probates, it's like incredibly crazy. Like I did one, the 3 heirs, I had to get a probate attorney involved, make sure it was all cleared up. How can somebody find an actual competent attorney when it comes to real estate wholesaling? Because there's some bad ones out there. I'm not saying all real estate attorneys are bad, but there's some really good ones and there's some really bad ones. How can someone find a right one if they're brand new, they don't know how to find a good one?
Yes, that's a great question. So if you're trying to find an attorney that is investor friendly, that's familiar with the type of transactions that you're doing, number one, I'm going to recommend reaching out to your RIA, right? Like who are
Okay.
the attorneys that are connected to your real estate investor association? Who are your colleagues using? You're going to hear the same names, the same firms, right? So I would say that, using social media, checking hashtags, seeing who is consistently talking about this topic. If you're completely, having no luck, you can also try just Googling probate attorney, closing attorney, estate planning attorney. Folks will come right up. We also have the local bar association, so you can reach out to your state bar and see if there's someone that they can refer you to. But the best thing to do is to reach out to your local real estate investor associations and real estate like meetup groups and see who folks are consistently using.
All right. And speaking of that, do you host a RIA?
So yes, I'm a teacher with South Atlanta RIA.
Okay.
That we're servicing folks nationally. So
All
I
right.
actually do a meetup on the third Saturday of every month. So folks typically come and ask me questions, and then we have speakers because it's a creative finance group. So I do that, and then I teach CE classes with South Atlanta RIA. I'm just super super involved. So that makes a difference, and you probably could tell I'm very passionate about helping y'all.
Oh, definitely. I definitely appreciate it. So is that in person?
So it's virtual. We are
Oh,
completely
wow.
virtual RIA. So no matter what state you're in, you can tap in and learn not only from myself but other teachers with the RIAs also.
Ah, cool. And in your experience dealing with the probates, real estate investors, is there any like crazy, insane wholesaling probate stories that you've had to deal with?
Gosh. So I think one would be from one of our customers who got a list. They had been working it for several months, and there was like 7 heirs, and they all showed up to closing. And I've actually heard that several times, right? And that's a very common thing where folks are like, yes, so and so is the administrator, but those family members still had very much a say so, and that's holding up folks' deal. So I think that's the craziest thing where the heirs get up to like 7 to 10 people, and all these people want to have an opinion. They all want to show up to closing. So that was a crazy story that I heard last summer.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And I mean, when it comes to heirs again, how do you figure out who you should contact if you see a vacant property on your street or driving for dollars and you see it's the, John Doe, and you found out this John Doe guy died?
Mhm.
How do you, I mean, how does somebody figure out what they should do in that situation? Because I was in that situation, I think, a couple of weeks ago. I was driving for dollars on an appointment, and I saw this property. It was completely disgusting, and that person
Mhm.
had like no heirs. I didn't know who to contact. Do you know how, with someone that pulls lists, how you actually get in contact with someone like that?
Yeah, so we've heard that situation before, where there appears to be no family. So one thing I'll say is they have family somewhere, right? Trust me, they'll pop up. So, you can always check court record by like searching the deceased person's name just to see if anything has been filed, right? And I think this is more so a skip tracing issue, like,
Hmm.
just skip tracing and seeing if you can find someone related, and then someone's going to have to start that probate process if there's nothing in place. And then if you're looking at a file or just analyzing a probate case, now we're going to focus on the executor, right? Or the administrator. Like that's going to be the person who we send our marketing to, who we reach out to. Even though, like I said, there's situations where folks have an opinion, but that's going to be the person that's legally responsible for the case.
Okay. And this brings me to something that it's pretty second nature in my, because I've been pulling probates for, I think, 4 years now.
Yeah.
But overall, when someone, let's say they go to their local county, they pull the probate list, and there's a bunch of like weird language out there, like PR,
Mhm.
personal representative, heir. Can you explain all those crazy terms to someone who's brand new into wholesaling and just, it sounds like Spanish? But like,
Yeah.
can you explain that when they get the list, there's terms that are very confusing. Can you
Mhm.
explain that to, for everyone?
Yes. So, in regard to analyzing your list information or analyzing a file, the terms can be somewhat interchangeable because depending on your state, they may say personal representative, right? Or they may say administrator, depending on the type of case, or executor. But those are the three individuals that we're looking for as far as our marketing. And so, typically, like if you had a list from us, we have a column where we put administrator information, right? We call that the boss, the administrator, the executor, the personal representative. That's the boss, right? So that's what we
Yeah.
want to call, and we want to get their phone number, right? Because these lists typically come with a phone number. Then the next important like person or star of this case would be the person that passed away. So that's the deceased person. And then the last would be the attorney, even though I recommend focusing on the boss that I mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
because attorneys, they're getting tons of other things, and that's just good. You don't want to waste your marketing sending a bunch of
Yeah.
letters to attorneys. But so the three terms that I would say, keep in my notes would be, your administrator, executor, and personal representative. That's like one column. The deceased person, the person that passed away,
Mhm.
and the attorney.
Okay. And have your, uh, I guess, clients,
Mhm.
are they having the most success with letters, with cold calling? Where are you seeing it shift for 2021? Where's the best kind of marketing channel for probates?
2020 marketing, I definitely have seen text messaging heating up. Text messaging is red
Okay.
hot, right? And then cold calling, right? Consistent cold calling. I s- the, I would say direct mail still works, but you just have to put in that work to be consistent and to have unique mail pieces that actually get opened. But for 2021, I definitely would start with that text or cold call and then kind of build from there if I'm not getting a response.
Okay. And in some of your courses and stuff on Law Clerk on Demand, I don't
Mhm.
think you're going out there cold calling saying, "Hey, hey, Mary, I saw your
Mhm.
mom died. I'm looking to buy your house." Like, how does
No.
someone? No, no. How does someone text and call the right way when it comes to an actual probate?
In my humble opinion, I feel that you should call a probate like you would call any other cold
Mhm.
called lead, and you should actively listen for them to tell you what the situation is. I am just giving you a heads up that hey, this person's on a probate list, but I've heard some horror stories of folks saying, "Hey, you're on a list, that's why I'm calling you." Or "Hey, I'm calling you about case number such and such." Like that is really impersonal, and you wouldn't want someone to call and say that you're on a list, right? So just call them like you would, build that relationship, and they will tell you the story. And then, of course, you would react with the same compassion you would if that person was in front of you.
All right. Yeah, that's great. Guys, comment below your probate questions for Deonna. She'd be happy to answer them, and she's probably one of the most knowledgeable people I can get on this show when it comes to probate. So this is a very rare opportunity to have someone that understands wholesaling, understands the law in Georgia. But comment below your questions. Let me ask Deonna a last question for me, and then we'll let the audience let it go. When it comes to actually with probates, what is the hardest thing when it comes to actually new people understanding probates?
I think folks get overwhelmed when trying to understand probates with just the terminology. And I
Mhm.
think they get a lot of analysis paralysis thinking, I don't know enough. I don't know enough to start. And really, if you're listening to this podcast, you know enough to start because we just covered it, right? You
Yeah.
need to, and if you know how to cold call, if you know how to pick up your phone and call, you have enough information. So I think that's the hardest thing. Yeah, and I would just say just go for it. This is a tried and true niche in real estate marketing. It works, but you have to work it and you have to be consistent. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
All right. And is there any stories from Law Clerk on Demand, like testimonials? I mean, you're changing lives over there, but
Yeah.
is there any specific testimonial that really tugged on your like heartstrings the most, that really got you excited with that passion of helping people?
Yes, it happens all the time, but I'm thinking of one realtor in particular who was helping a woman whose husband had passed away. She was living in a large, beautiful home, and she was just overwhelmed. And this particular realtor, she got her list like in the fall, maybe like October, but this probate case didn't really finalize until December, January. And so she took the time to send like a holiday card. She went to see her, checked in. She even called me to like check with the court to make sure her case was moving along, reminders to check her mail. And, they were able to get that property under contract and listed, but she just went above and beyond. And I think that is so important because, folks really are overwhelmed when they lose a loved one. And this was an older woman, so just the thought of even checking her mail was too much. And so that realtor really shined. And of course, she was able to sell that property, but she also received several referrals, right? Because she built a relationship with that woman who probably wouldn't have been able to finish all that stuff if she didn't have her realtor like supporting her through the process. So that's one of my favorites, but
Yeah.
there's ton.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, really, guys, when we're doing probates, of course, we love making money. I make a lot of money wholesaling probates, but we're really in the business of helping people. Like that, at the end of the day, it's truly helping someone because they have a problem. So don't come out cold calling someone with a probate as I'm trying to make money. Like try
Right.
to help them get a solution. You guys will do well. Um, Ken Fulton has been looking forward to this podcast all day. Let's go. I'm telling you. If you want to check out more of Deonna's stuff, she's got actually a cool YouTube channel. It's a Law Clerk on Demand, right?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
It's very niched out to the polling lists and probates with her. I mean, I would definitely hop on that train, watch those videos. They're
Yes.
really good. And she's been hooked up with some other wholesaling guys out there that you can get
Hmm.
some great information. Uber Wholesaler, what's up? What's up? Hey, Rick, this is Zach, but what's up, man? What's up? Um, Ken asks, I want to get a hold of probate list, but it's hard for me because I don't know how to get it virtually. Ken, let me know what market you're in, but how do
Right.
you answer that question?
Yeah, I think it would depend on what market you're in. You certainly can reach out to us for ideas. This is one of the reasons why I do so much content online about probate and like understanding it. And anytime I teach about it, it applies to any state. So even if we're not servicing your area, you can still use our information and take that to your local courthouse. But if you need to do it virtually, yeah, I would definitely send someone for you to pull the information. That would be my suggestion.
Definitely. And Jarrett is here for the jewels. What's one jewel that you can give about probates that I didn't ask?
I think folks need to understand the consistency that
Yeah.
the follow up that is required for probate. I think that's some of the frustration because folks, will call me and say, "Hey, Deonna, what's the list that I can get a deal the fastest?" Right? And there isn't a list that functions that way, right? You have to follow up, and specifically probates. I have some customers that have followed up with a probate list they got from me for 2 years prior to the closing. Okay, so this is consistently sending a letter, making a call, sending a text message at least once a month, right? So if you can't handle that, yourself, then this may be a task that you delegate to
Mhm.
someone, or you invest in a software that can help you stay on top of it. But probate requires consistent follow up.
Oh, consistency is everything in probates. I couldn't
Yes.
say it better myself. Donna wants to know, what is the cost for the actual list?
Yeah, so the cost for the list varies. So whether you want to get it individually, and then we have a subscription program where you save up to 50%. So I would say just check out our website, lawclerkondemand.com, and then just decide how you want to purchase your list. But you actually save when you purchase multiple lists at once.
Oh, lawclerkondemand.com. And
Yes.
you're the only law clerk, like you're the only probate list person that'll do it for you that I will only recommend because you'll physically actually get it. I'm sick. Like I've had people say, I bought a list. Probate sucks. I'm like, you're not
Mm,
getting it on time. You're just yeah, check her out. Let's say, for example, I lived in Miami-Dade. How could I use you to actually get a list?
So, what you could do is if we're not in your area, like we're not in Miami yet, right?
Mm,
So, I would recommend using like our course to learn how to pull lists. And
okay.
some folks will do that. Like they'll jump in our course, learn how to pull lists. I walk you through everything so that you're empowered to pull your own leads. And then we're quickly working to service other areas as well.
All right. And we got Kingfisher, Theo, Dang, missed the beginning. I have to catch a replay. Yes, this is live right now. You can catch the replay. I'm telling you right now, if you got just listen to this thing like 3 times, put it at 2x speed, just so you can hear the process one more time. It will help you so much because just the repetition of learning the process, because I'm telling you, it will help you so much. Uh, One thing I really have to ask is, I mean, you're explaining the process to us wholesalers very well, but that's the one half. And I think getting a lot of good probate deals is when you're dealing with a seller and they want you to walk through the process with them because they're confused. And if you go to a seller and you're confused about it, they're not going to really trust you too much. So it's one thing understanding probate yourself, but how do you understand probate enough where you can actually teach a seller the process and walk through them and help them out?
Yes. So if you want to be more comfortable with learning this, I would say listen to the tutorials. That's actually why I do the content that I do, so that you guys can, I don't care if it's a 1 minute video or if you're listening to a 45-minute presentation that I do, that's exactly why I do this. So I would say just, connect with me, continue to listen to the different pre-recorded um, lectures that I have, and just until you get comfortable. Also figure out what's going on in your state so you can kind of put in like probate in your state, see if you can read some good blogs on it as well. But that's the exact reason why I do the content that I do. And actually, folks can actually go over to my website and watch a free probate video like as soon as this is over.
Oh yeah, go
So
do it.
I do that for you guys so you can just start learning now.
Okay. And how can somebody go? Let's say I live in Georgia, but anywhere really in around the country, how can I go look up the actual written law on probate?
Yeah, so you can, depending on your state, so you put in this is just like a Google search should bring it up. Like put in your state, type the word probate, it'll start bringing it up. Or checking the court websites may have a link to the laws in your state. It just depends on how your state organizes information. But this comes right up online. And sometimes they have like pamphlets and things like that that'll say like what to do if someone passes away, because this is made available to the public. So while the clerks cannot give you legal advice, a lot of times there are pamphlets and things that are made available for those filing. So you as an investor could have that, you know.
Okay.
And then, like I said, if you want the video or audio version, then just use all my stuff.
Sweet. Yeah. And also you got a really good Instagram. I'm going to put that up too. Follow us
Thank
both
you.
on Instagram, flipoftherick.com, Flip of the Rick and Law Clerk on Demand. And smash that like button, subscribe while you're at it. This is a really good question. I don't think I even thought about this. This is smart. Can probate leads be acquired through a FOIA act?
So that is not typically that is used for like different types of lists.
Mhm.
Um, there may be courthouses that make it that difficult that you have to use that. I would say that's a very extra and
Yeah.
difficult courthouse if they make you fill out that form. Typically, that's not required, but I can think of one situation where they did like make you put it in writing and it was like a lot of steps. So potentially, but usually that's not required.
And I'm telling you right now, this is from my experience. There's one county where they
Mhm.
said, I'm not giving the probate list. And I threatened to do a FOIA act and they gave it to me. I ended up being one of two people in the entire actual like county. Only two wholesalers had the probate list. When the courthouse makes it hard to get probates, that is the best thing I could ever hear, which means that means it's so hard for a regular Joe Schmo wholesaler to get out there. Have you found that the harder it is to actually get the probates once you get it, the more successful you actually are?
Absolutely. Because that's the thing, and I like to be honest about that. And I'm glad you shared that because folks think, oh, I'm just going to go to my courthouse and they're going to give it to me. Well, one, it's not a list; it has to be created. So you're really going to have to dig through those cases. There are some courthouses that are backlogged, right? So
Oh,
that could affect you, right? And yes, there are courthouses that are just going to straight up tell you no. And so if you're able to fight through those no's and get access to those leads, then yeah, just common sense, right? Like most people are going to give up on that first no. They're going to be like, oh, okay, I guess this isn't for me. Real estate isn't for me. And they just throw up their hands. But the person that is diligent and continually pushing for information, that's the person that's going to win.
okay. And Kevin asks, if I want to wholesale a deal, but it has to go through the probate process, can the cash buyer contract the property as is and pay for the probate and buy the home after the probate?
Okay, there's a lot of layers to
Yeah.
that. But what I will say, because I don't know where you are and I don't know the laws in your state specifically. So what I will say is that it's going to be a state specific process as with all probate, right? So and what I will say generally is usually probate has to be completed before anyone buys the property unless there is a legal device in play that gives that person the right to sell it to you, okay? Now, there are some states that have some workarounds. So, you would just have to get familiar with your state to see what it is that you can do.
In my opinion, again, I'm not a lawyer, but if a cash buyer puts on a contract, how are you going to get paid? That is the one thing I would think about in that situation. I would want to be in control, Kevin. Um, but
Right.
that's not a legal thing. That's just business. But
Yeah.
how can a wholesaler structure this deal using assignment or contract clauses? Uh, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so the probate deals are just
New
like
York.
any other deal. Yeah, any other deal. So, I mean, as long as this person legally has the right to sell with you at that moment, once the person says yes, we know we don't have anything going on, you're still going to jump in and treat this like any other wholesale transaction, right? So, you should have your agreement in place. You should have your closing attorney in place and you want to get that information over to them. Your closing attorney is going to check and make sure your ducks are in a row, but it's the same thing. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about. You don't want to overcomplicate it and think that there's this special approach besides having compassion and being an educator. But as far as the real estate transaction, it's going to be pretty much similar.
Yeah, and again, in New York, I'm 99% sure you got to get an attorney to actually to put it under contract.
Mhm.
That's how kind of New York. That's why it sucks for wholesaling, but I won't even get into that. We got another question here. Where do I get that list, the probate list?
Yes. So, yeah, we shared. You can connect with me, lawclerkondemand.com. And then we are Law Clerk on Demand on all social media.
Oh, Law Clerk on Demand. Let's see. Kevin asks again. Thanks for the question, Kevin. If the homeowner that passed away had creditors that are not paid, will those bills have to be paid in order to pass the home onto the heirs?
So immediately, I would probably say yes, unless there is something in place, um, like 12-year support or something like that,
Mm,
where the spouse is asking for a year to avoid the creditors kind of
yeah.
attaching to all the assets. So again, that's going to be state specific, and it's also going to depend on the actual situation of the case.
Okay. And would you treat that kind of like a mortgage, more or less? If they owe 90, you have to put under contract for this price and sell it.
So I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Yeah. So if someone, they owned it free and clear and there's $20,000 in creditors, that you probably have to get something above that
Hmm.
to put under contract to get them some equity, like the
Yes.
seller. Okay.
Yes.
And Tosh says, "What's up, Tosh? Awesome info. I'm a new wholesaler in Memphis, Tennessee. Wish you were here." Uh, how can Tosh get a law clerk on demand in Memphis?
I would say, well, one, connect with us, because we should be in your area soon. Two, I
Sweet.
would say, staying connected to your RIAs, your real estate investor associations, your real estate meetups and things like that. Because the value in going to those type of meetings is that you're going to see other service providers. So um, I would say that's where they are. But for the most part, if you're looking for the education piece or you want your particular city or state to be on our radar, just connect with us, send us an email, let us know where you're from, and then we'll see if we can get that request done for you.
Sweet. Malachi says, "What's up? What's up, guys? Hi. 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 Yo, Zach, I need your guidance on cold calling. This isn't really a cold calling video, but if you want, just join the Facebook group, Wholesaling Houses for Real. That's my Facebook group. We can talk about that any other time. How do I find the real number the best? In your opinion, for probate, how do you find someone's phone number the best if they don't
Yeah.
provide it?
Well, if they don't provide it, then it becomes an issue where you have to skip trace, right? But typically with court lists, the phone number is provided because they're communicating with the court. So, and that number typically is accurate. So that's why I love court records so much because you don't have to do all of that finding the seller. But if you do select a county where the phone number is like left blank, then that becomes a situation where you just want to get really good skip tracing.
Yeah. And do you have a skip tracing company you recommend?
We've got some on our website. So you just go to Law Clerk on Demand slash resources and you'll see them there. But what do you think? Do you have one that you love?
Not really in particular. I mean, Batch Leads is a good one. True People
Yeah.
Search is a free one. It sucks though in Florida. You don't get any phone numbers.
Oh,
It's terrible. But man, I'm jealous. But Roderick asks here, do you have to work with attorneys when it comes to working probates?
so as far as working probates, you can work a probate by getting a list, right? So that's why the probate list exists because I'm not a proponent of sending our customers to go marketing to attorneys. I think the best way to find a probate lead is to get a probate list and contact the person that filed. So that would be the best thing. And then of course, depending on your state, you're going to need an attorney later on in your real estate process. But as far as just marketing, you just need to get access to the list and the case information.
All right. And that's the good one. Last question here. I have a
Mhm.
contract with a seller and he contacted me today. Why title company didn't contact him yet? And right now I'm looking for a buyer. How do I give myself more time and what should I say? Do you have an answer to this?
I was going to say, I was listening for your answer strategy wise. What do you typically do in that situation?
You get the title company just to contact them. But I mean, pretty easy for that. If you want to buy more time, just say my partner's waiting. But good question. I mean, you're
Yes.
helping everyone out. Tosh says, thank you. Thank you. Now we got that out of the way. Law
Mhm.
Clerk on Demand's awesome. Great for probates. But this is something I want to ask because this is mostly a probate video. But since I have you on here, I
Sure.
think one of the most important lists coming 2021 is going to be that evictions list. Um,
Yes.
I know Law Clerk on Demand actually does evictions lists.
We do.
This is a probate video, but how can someone get an evictions list? And
Mhm.
really, my question here is: I know in Georgia, things are getting a little backlogged. I know in
Mhm.
Port St. Lucie, where I'm at, there's a 3-month backlog.
Mhm.
When I pull an eviction list or I buy it from you, are you getting the actual physical like roll of evictions coming out, or is this the actual evictions that are filed in the court when I get that eviction list?
Good question. So we, for all of our lists, we are at the time of filing. So again,
Okay.
although there was a hold on actual putting, folks out of the property, the actual eviction, we were still able to pull that list all year of folks that have filed. And then you may have to use additional strategies if they're not on the eviction docket or calendar for the actual eviction, then that becomes a strategy thing, right? Working with the owner of the property to get that tenant out. But as far as pulling the evictions, we always come in like when that paperwork's dropped off. That's how we prepare a list to ensure you're getting the freshest information because you don't want to get it too late and then the eviction's already done, right? So that's how we always looked at it.
All right. And you do evictions. Is there any other lists that you recommend and you do on Law Clerk on Demand?
Yes. So probates, evictions, and the third is divorce.
Nice.
Divorce is very straightforward. Again, we're really doing real time case information. So, and it's within that same like 30-day window. So you're getting there as soon as possible.
All right. And my divorce list question here is
Mhm.
I've had to deal with this a million times. There's no answer for me I can give. What do you do if you got a divorce list and let's say wife wants to sell for 50,000 and husband wants to sell for like 80,000 and they both hate each other and it's a he said she said, it's all emotional. Like
Mhm.
how can a wholesale in that situation kind of get something done when both parties literally hate each other?
Right. So you have two parties that cannot agree to the price of the property.
Mhm.
Okay. So, in that situation, I think it's really going to depend on your state, but there could be something like a forced sale where the property is forced to be sold,
Yeah.
and then it becomes, an additional court proceeding where the judge is going to make a call on that. But I think it's going to depend on the facts of the situation in that specific case. But I definitely have heard that come up before. So I think that becomes a legal issue that the court would have to get involved with to move this along. But
Great.
they both legally own that property, so if they have marital property together, then yeah, they both have the right to have a say so on how that property sold.
Wow. Um, Thank you so much for coming on today, Deonna. That was a lot of information. I know 100%. There's people that you got to rewatch this. This is just chock full of information. I truly appreciate you taking out time in your day to actually show us this information, share the probate process. It's absolutely amazing. I really appreciate you coming on. You have a great Instagram, Law Clerk on Demand, lawclerkondemand.com. Where can people reach you, and what are some parting thoughts you have for the guests?
Yes. Well, first, I want to say thank you so much for having me. Thank you to everyone that's watching and listening. Um, I would say, really just give it a try. Court record is going to be tried and true as we go into 2021. This is a great way to get some traction in your business. I know there's a lot of questions about skip tracing, but really focusing on court record, you're not going to have to do as much skip tracing, right? So I know it's always how do we find the seller? But if you really start focusing on the probates and evictions, you're going to deal with a lot more, or divorce or any court list, a lot less skip tracing, searching for the seller. So it's a great way to get your phone ringing or for you to, get some sellers on the phone. So that's what I would leave everyone with. Just give it a try, get started, make the calls so you can get some traction. And then if you would like to reach out to me, like maybe you listen to the replay and you have a question, you can always contact us, lawclerkondemand.com. You can email us, admin@lawclerkondemand.com, or just connect with us on social media. We're Law Clerk on Demand on Instagram, Facebook.
Thank you so much, Deonna. And any parting thoughts for the audience?
Yeah, I would just say, thank you so much for listening. And I'm super excited to connect with everyone and go grab your free probate training right now at lawclerkondemand.com.
Boom. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you next week. Have a good one.